Hello science fans and welcome to SHE-ensya. Today I give you a special episode based on a career talk I gave to my students a while back. I believe it is still relevant because we still have a lot of young individuals trying to figure out their path in life. And I hope I can give you an example of how it is to follow your STEM passion here in the Philippines. The title of the short presentation I gave was The Central Dogma, mostly because I find comfort in discussing principles of molecular biology, but mostly because I wasn't sure how to do a career talk. After all, we have strikingly different pathways in life, and what works for one person may not necessarily work for another. But I did my review of related literature, and I hope my presentation can help you decide if you want to commit to the field of STEM here in the Philippines. But let me first introduce myself. I am Shauna Camille Vinci Cruz Abeledo, and here is a summary of my degrees as a biologist. As you can see, I come from diverging backgrounds. Instead of specializing, I made interdisciplinarity my field. I made use of techniques from molecular biology, ecology, and environmental science to find practical solutions for fishers and farmers in the Philippines. My first set of professional decision-makings happened in 2007, about 12 kilos ago, as I completed a degree in molecular biology and biotechnology. As a millennial scientist, I was excited to see what the world had to offer, but there were many external and internal challenges that I had to face first. I had to make peace with the fact that I was looking for a job during a time when the world economy was barely recovering from a worldwide recession, so employment options for a molecular biologist was limited. I also had to deal with parental pressure that was pointing a stiff finger towards med school, and of course, my own barometer of pride. But my goals then, I believe, were actually pretty simple. First, I wanted to achieve financial stability because I didn't want to be a burden to my family. But more importantly, I wanted to buy my independence. If I could provide for my own needs, then I would have a stronger case to pursue my own path, separate from the one my family meticulously designed for me. Oh, also, I wanted to be happy. Although, to be honest, I might not have been sure what happiness meant at that time. But I think it had something to do with not wanting to be stuck in a job or studying for a graduate degree that would make me want to rip off my own teeth. So although I didn't know which company would accept me, there was one thing I was sure of back then, that I wouldn't be happy as a medical doctor. Partly because I was deathly afraid of blood, but also because of that punch in the gut I would feel at the thought of spending hours upon hours at the hospital or clinic, similar to what a trapped animal might feel while being stuck in a cage. But don't get me wrong, I have so much respect and love for our doctors and other health-allied professionals. It was my personality and the research interests that I wanted to pursue that made it difficult for me to commit to medicine. So I refused a scholarship to the intermed program of the University of the Philippines, to the anger of my mother. And I started applying to a large variety of companies, from call centers, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, and to the De La Salle University. Now, in the central dogma of molecular biology, replication is a process that involves the DNA creating an exact copy, a clone of itself, in preparation for cell division. As a young jobless person with limited options, I decided to clone what I already knew instead of diving into something completely new. So I decided to enroll in a master's program in molecular biology and biotechnology and support myself by teaching at the De La Salle University. Though I wasn't doing much of anything new, I had so many amazing memories with some of my earliest students. The cloning I was doing to myself went on even in the classroom when most of the classes that I taught was called SciMat B, Biotechnology for Non-Biology Majors. I particularly enjoyed the end-of-term requirement, which was to make a GMO. And although no real genetically modified organisms were made, It was so much fun to see the proposals that the students came up with. If you're interested to learn more about genetic engineering, please watch the SHE-ensya video that will pop up over here at the end of this one. It was during this time that my worldview started to change, when I kept encountering students who seemed to know more about what they wanted in life than I did. I also found myself in the company of giants, whose accomplishments I can barely imagine myself being capable of. I felt like an imposter, and I developed a lot of anxiety for fear of judgment that I would never be enough as an educator and as a scientist. I battled my fears and anxieties by studying and working myself to the bone, but not really confronting the root of the issues that I was facing. So now, I'm pretty sure that I did more harm than good at that time. During this replicative state of my life, I also lacked financial stability. Part-time teaching back then only earned me 8,000 pesos a month, barely enough to cover bills and transport costs. Also, I was exhausted, drained, and stressed. And as for my studies, I didn't have much interest in the available research at the institute at that time. So I was losing my motivation, I was getting lost, and I knew I needed a change. Going back to the central dogma, transcription is a process involving the creation of a new biomolecule, the mRNA. It is still based on the template of the DNA, but still, it was new. So while I stayed at the De La Salle University as a teacher, I shifted my master's program from molecular biology to environment and natural resources management. I also decided to cut myself some slack, so I found myself freed from the confines of the lab, traipsing across mountains with indigenous peoples, working with field rangers, knee-deep in mud with fishermen, and so much more. I also freed up some time to pursue entrepreneurship with my then boyfriend, now husband, and helped open a creative studio. Our products were even featured on TV. But we had to put that venture on pause because of other professional engagements, but it was one hell of an experience. One important aspect of this change in career direction was the freedom it gave me to balance both my social interests and my research interests. It was so refreshing, though no less hectic, that I was finally able to attend Comic-Cons while also presenting papers in scientific conventions. And the peak of this part of my life was when I completed my master's degree with honors. I was also able to travel to different places I wouldn't have otherwise afforded to go to, because of grants and scholarships I received through my research and paper presentations of their results. So after 4 years from college graduation, I was able to gain my master's degree and learned so many things about myself as well. At this point, I was fully aware I was very happy teaching. It seems it was my vocation, and I was one of the lucky ones who was able to find this out so early after graduation. However, I still had no financial stability until I got my PhD and go through the rigorous process of attaining permanency for at least 3 years. I would have to stay in a part-time teaching position. This is a challenging feature of academia in the Philippines and many other places worldwide. As we rally against contractualization in Jollibee and other big companies, please take note that a lot of part-time faculty in almost all of the colleges and universities in the Philippines are also hired in a contractual manner with little to no benefits. So a salute please to our part-time faculty to continue to work hard on their passion despite the difficulties placed upon them by the limitations of the hiring process in the academy. And on to the third event of the central dogma, which is translation. This is when a whole new biomolecule is formed from the template passed on from the DNA to the mRNA. It creates something completely new and functional with a systemic effect to the whole organism. My transition to translation and the clarification of my identity as a Filipino researcher happened when I received an offer to be a research associate for the Practical Genomics Laboratory back in 2012. It began a journey that allowed me to create a synergy between molecular biology and environmental science, and also a love affair with mangrove crabs that I carry until today. Through this project, I was able to travel across the Philippines to do fieldwork and meet fishermen from the Philippines coast to coast. I was also able to present our findings in various ASEAN countries. This was a very busy time in my life, and it had my highest highs and lowest lows. My mother, the reason why I stayed in the Philippines for my graduate studies, passed away during my comprehensive examinations. But I also got married while completing my dissertation. I am so lucky to have a very supportive husband and partner who encourages my creative side, shares my passion for travel and adventures. I wouldn't have been able to achieve all that I have if he wasn't with me all the way during my journey. After our wedding, we flew to the University of Washington in Seattle, and I was able to complete a portion of my dissertation at the Friday Harbor Laboratories, the home of Aquaria victoria, the fluorescent jellyfish which is the source of green fluorescent protein, a ubiquitous molecule used in biotechnology diagnostics. With my Fulbright scholarship, I was also squeezed out of my comfort zone. It was 2016, and a historic election was coming up, so I thought learning about democracy and politics would be interesting. It turns out the immersion seminar in Washington, D.C. would involve a simulation of the presidential elections, and I was picked as one of the presidential candidates. After a week long of crazy activities involving campaigning, doing speeches, and even participating in a political debate, I won as President of the United States with a unanimous 125 votes from fellow Fulbright scholars all over the world. I got to defend my dissertation upon return to the Philippines. I was conferred my PhD while I proudly wore my platinum blonde hair. At this point, I was pushing for inclusivity in the field of STEM here in the Philippines. After all, should scientists really look a certain way in order for them to be respected or to be respectable? And so 9 years after college, I finally have my PhD. And now, just slightly more than 3 years later, this coming second semester of academic year 2020-2021, I am finally a permanent faculty of the Biology Department of the De La Salle University. And so here I am today, turning 35 years old in a month's time. Do I have lots of money? No, not really. But I have made myself adaptable to any field of research or advocacy that I would want to work on in the future. I have also created a network of friends and family that I could fall back on and who could fall back on me if there is a need to. And most importantly, I have made it a profession to find joy in whatever I do. So it's been an amazing journey so far. And I hope this has encouraged you to find your own STEM journey as well. So thank you very much for joining us in this very special video. I hope you were able to learn something from it. And if you did, I hope you can give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please don't hesitate to message me, your resident Filipino scientist, in the comments section below. Thank you very much, and see you around!